Welcome to the inaugural episode of Florida Majority, where we're going to get into the personal, the political, and the peculiar of everything happening in Florida politics. And we want to make sure that we are giving you access to the members of the Republican Party in the Florida House of Representatives and even some of our candidates as they embark on their campaign for re-election or election in 2022. And it's a great opportunity to actually kick this off with the chairman of the Florida House Republican Campaign Committee, the now Speaker-designate of the Florida House of Representatives, our chairman, Paul Renner. Thank you so much for being here, Chairman.
Andre, it's great to be with you.
Absolutely. So before we kick off, there's going to be plenty of information that we're going to talk about, and all of those things are going to be available on our website at floridahousegop.com. You can find us at Facebook and on Twitter at Florida Majority, or even on Instagram at FHRCC. So check out those channels. Please make sure that you're following us. Share the content that we're putting out there, because we want to make sure that we're putting really good content out for people that they can share with their communities so that they can help us stay in power, right? We've got a 78-member majority in the Florida House right now. Speaker Sprowls from the Tampa area did an incredible job last election. Tell me, what did you take away from the 2018 election?
From the 2018 election?
2020 election.
Well, the 2020 election, which now Speaker Sprowls ran as Speaker designate, was a huge success. We had 5 seats that were formerly held by Democrats that we took over. Nobody expected that. We had out-of-state money, over $13 million that was spent to try to beat our incumbents, and not one of them lost. And so it was a fantastic election cycle, and credit to now Speaker Sprowls and the House campaigns team for getting that done. And really thanks to the voters for coming out, and every vote does matter. As a guy who lost his first race by 2 votes, I can tell you that every vote matters. And because people turned out in large numbers, Republicans had a great election cycle, and that's a win for freedom and opportunity.
And we're going to get into some of those other freedom and opportunity policies that you're talking about a little bit later in the show. We're going to highlight we want to get into a little bit of the personal of who you are and why we should really be excited that you're leading the conference for the next 3 years, essentially, as chairman now of the committee, and then as Speaker of the Florida House once the 2022 election happens. That 2020 election was really interesting, observing some of the things, because you all brought back one of the most diverse conferences, really in a long time. Out of those 5 seats that we won, all of them were won by women. That was something that was really interesting, and a big takeaway by the Florida press and even national press that took notice of how the Republican Party is continuing to grow and evolve. What do you say to that?
Well, Tom Fabrizio would want me to say that there was one that was won by a man, but that's right. Of the 5 seats that we turned from blue to red, 4 of the 5 were female candidates, and more importantly, of that class were a lot of other women that won election, and the most we've had in quite some time. And so our numbers in the Florida House on the Republican side are higher than they've ever been among female Republicans, and we're really proud of that. And they're all, to a woman, every one of them are great leaders in their own right.
They really are. This was a really outstanding freshman class, one of the largest freshman classes I recall in a while. But I think it speaks to again, the growth, the diversity, and the issues that we're advocating for, that people are excited to send us back to Tallahassee for the last 25 years now. We'll talk a little bit about that in the future of the show. But let's get into some news of the week. There's been a lot happening, obviously, at the federal level. Gas prices are through the roof, food cost. There are all of these freighters out west that are just stuck out there. Our supply chain is in disarray. And Governor DeSantis recently did something where he announced at the Port of Jacksonville that our ports are open. What is the Florida legislature going to do to make sure that the best governor in the state of Florida has the support to make sure that we can potentially even save Christmas?
Well, he's always had our support. And so obviously in our process, whatever he signs into law is something that the legislature has put together, debated and passed both in the House and Senate. And so we have been steadfast and really very, very closely aligned with the governor time after time on what he's working on. And so we share his view that we need to make sure that our ports are open. This idea that ships are sitting out in the Atlantic Ocean, waiting to come in, is one that we've got to overcome. You see that problem in California. You see a lot of problems in California that don't exist in Florida, because we've really been proactive, and we've staked our flag in a belief in political and economic liberty and freedom. And that has meant that Florida has rebounded not only from this pandemic, but from prior challenges back in the 2008 crash. We continue to be a very resilient state, and we see that in all the budget numbers that are coming in as we're kind of estimate as we go into session. What the budget picture looks like. It's very bright, in part because people are back to work. The economy is getting back to where it needed to be pre-pandemic, and that's a credit to the governor and to the legislature for keeping Florida free and open.
Now, you talked about some fiscal issues there. Certainly, when we compare that to the Biden agenda, what Congress is doing, somehow they've tried to convince us again that spending $3.5 trillion will cost zero. We know that that's not the case. And in Florida, we are required to balance our budget, but we also do so in a way that is much more responsible than states like California, states like New York that spend 2-3 times as much as we do on government services. What is it about the philosophy that you're going to bring, but also the philosophy over the last almost 3 decades of Republican control in the Florida House that has made it possible for us to prioritize in the right places?
Right. Well, I think what people need to understand about the federal government is every single dollar of that 3.5 trillion in the reconciliation bill, the 1.2 trillion in the infrastructure bill, and all the trillions that's already been spent since Biden became president. Every single dollar, every dollar is borrowed. Every dollar is printed, newly printed money, which creates inflation. It means the value of the dollar in your pocket is worth less today because of Joe Biden being president, the Democrats being in control, than it was before they got there. And so we have to be really, really careful. We are indebting and really bankrupting our country as we go. Now, Republicans, in my opinion, haven't done a great job at the federal level, but this is kind of gross and obscene. It takes it to a new level, the amount of money we're spending. Just think about Obamacare. All of Obamacare costs less than $1 trillion, just to give you some perspective of the money we're talking about. And in the state of Florida, we're a balanced budget state. So we don't spend another dollar more than what we bring in. We can't print money. We don't print money. And so that's what every family does. That's what every business does. And so as a result of that, it forces legislators to be responsible and prioritize, to say, okay, here are the dollars that are available. These are all these important things, which always are more than the money we have. And we have to prioritize where those monies should go. As a result of that, Florida is one of the few states in the country who the credit rating agencies put at the very highest level. We have the highest credit rating of any state in the country. Our books are balanced. Our debt ratios, all the things that people look at, are in great shape. This is a very, very well-run state. And importantly, for people listening, that means our state can absorb a hurricane. We can absorb a pandemic. We can do it in a way where we can absorb crises that come along, because they will come along. And so we've set money aside for the future. We're now looking at how can we do things to benefit ourselves in infrastructure, whether it's environmental, water supply, water quality infrastructure. This year, the speaker and the legislature joined hands to help with flooding and resiliency. We put money aside for septic to sewer conversion, things like this. We have that extra money that other states don't, because we've been fiscally conservative. And so one of the things you get out of a Republican governance is responsible governance, where we have enough money left over that we can do things that we are looking forward and not playing catch up with our dollars, where you have states like Illinois, whose pension is so bad that they're just pumping money into their pension just to meet the obligations from 30 years ago. Our pension is one of the top 3 in the nation. So we've set the money aside. The people that have served us in police and fire and our teachers can rest assured that the money will be there for them when they're retired, the obligation we made to them. But beyond that, we have additional money to invest in the future. And that's what separates a state like Florida from a state like California, who is desperately trying to catch up with their current and even past obligations.
Now, Chairman, you always caught me as somebody, and I'm really is a privilege to get to work with the rest of this team and with you. Your colleagues say this about you, that you're very measured. You're a very steady hand. Where did that come from? What was your childhood like? What were your parents like that clearly instilled some of that in you? I know you're a veteran. You spent almost 20 years, or a little more than 20 years, in the Navy. But at what point and how did you arrive at this sort of perspective and your philosophy of just how you approach these issues?
Well, it kind of goes to the core of what I believe philosophically, which is, strong families make strong societies. And I was very blessed to have a great dad and a great mom. Dad was a preacher, mom was a school teacher. So I joke that, if I didn't learn about right and wrong from that couple, I was my own fault. And so I hopefully learned a good bit from them, and they taught me about the things that really matter in life. And so really having a strong center in faith and family and those types of things is what I got from my parents. That you can work hard and stay determined and you can accomplish anything. These are things that set children up for success. And I said in my designation that if we have strong families in our society, really strong families, loving moms, loving dads, we will resolve most of society's biggest problems. And if we don't, we'll have chaos. And there's no amount of government that can solve for that. And so families is where it all starts for the conservative, what we call today, I guess, the conservative philosophy. I think it's just about the organic things, the things that makes strong societies what they are. And that starts with strong families. You mentioned the military and kind of, why I am the way I am today probably is because they do teach you how to operate under stress, how to focus on the mission, how to rely on a team. And I said in my designation speech that we, learn in boot camp that, they put you under tremendous pressure. And when something doesn't get accomplished and they're intending for it not to get accomplished on time, we all do push-ups and you start relying on the man or woman to your left and right. And you realize that it's about a team effort. And so in the Florida House and in the Florida legislature, we're a collective body. There's 120 of us in the House and 40 in the Senate. We have to rely on each other as conservatives, as Republicans, to make sure that we're fighting for the people that sent us to Tallahassee. And that I think more than ever, people want members who are going to go and stand up for what they believe in and not shrink from that. And so I set out, three principles or three ideas. One is that we take our policy from our principles, that we unite together as one team, depending on the men and women from our left and right, and that we act with courage. And that's the last piece. You can have all the right ideas, but unless you're willing to stand up for those and operate with courage, they won't get done. And so we're in a special moment in Florida where we have a governor who's courageous. We have House members and senators who I believe are courageous and are moving us in the right direction and keeping us away from a lot of stupid ideas, frankly, that are happening all across the country.
We have been moving in the right direction, especially here in the state of Florida, certainly not in other parts of the country. And that's a lot to do with a lot of the policies that you all have prioritized, education in particular, environmental issues, just fiscal issues up and down the chain. Give us a recap of what were some of the top priorities that you were excited were passed last year, to just recap what happened last year, and then let's talk about a little preview about maybe what's to come now for the 2021 session.
Sure. Well, I mentioned flooding resilience, septic to sewer. We also had a great initiative on reading so that kids in the early grades, every kid in Florida, if they want, can have the opportunity to have a book sent to them for free. So they can have a book at home to read on a recurring basis. So prioritizing education, we continue to take giant strides in school choice. And the idea there is simply this, is that every kid learns differently. And so even brothers and sisters one will be good in math, one in English. We need to continue to assess students and customize our education. We need to be at a point where we treat individual students as individuals who learn differently and make sure that we're customizing their education. And so school choice is about putting the dollars there and looking at innovative ways to make sure that every child can rise to a level of education where they can achieve their dreams. And so we want to make sure for starters that kids can read on grade level by the third grade. And if you don't do that, the data is not very optimistic about where you finish. And so we have to hit that goal. We're better than many states, but we're not where we need to be. And so that reading initiative begins us down that path. There's more work to be done. So those are some key accomplishments. I think overall at a 30,000 foot level, it's about who controls your decisions in life. Do you, Republicans, and as I said again in my recent remarks to the conference, we want to put you in control of your children's education. We want to put you in control of your healthcare so that you make decisions that are best for you. We want transparency so you have the knowledge and the accurate information to make a decision that works for you, and respect what that decision is in your healthcare. And the same for other areas of life. But we want to put you in charge, not bureaucrats, not people who always think they know best for us and want to make decisions for us. only until they realize that they were wrong. And then they force this one size fits all solution on us in every aspect of our life. And so it's really about freedom to live your life and to make decisions that are best for you. And the vast majority of decisions belong to individuals and families, not to government and not to bureaucrats.
Now, how do you think that translates then across the state? I mean, this is a state that year after year, going back to the 2000 election where things went a little awry here, and we've now certainly cleaned that up. I would say Florida's, quite frankly, the standard as far as conducting our own elections. But people keep electing Republicans to statewide offices. Certainly, we have the governor's mansion again. Governor Ron DeSantis, clearly the best governor in the state in the country. And they continue to send back Republican majorities. How is it that these issues, do you think, are resonating with Floridians that they continue to send us back in this way?
Well, I think it's the things we've already talked about. I think it's that we have stood up for both political freedom and economic freedom. And it's sad that we're talking about political freedom, but the right to believe what you want, say what you want, worship as you choose, observe your constitutional rights, whether that's Second Amendment or your religious freedom, are things that, as a military guy, I went over and fought for. And so, if you hold everything I believe in contempt and believe the exact opposite I believe and we believe, you have that right. That's America. And so, the idea that we're going to get to a point where you have to conform to a narrow set of ideals, as I've said previously, is not a progressive idea in my mind, and it's certainly not American. And so, standing up for those things, what America has always been, what's made America great, is what Florida stands for. And so people have responded to that. We see people voting with their feet, both individuals that are moving here saying, you know what, I'm going to retire early, or I'm going to just move my business down. Businesses are flooding into the state, all kinds of businesses from California and elsewhere that are coming to the state of Florida because we have gotten it right. And so it's that people are recognizing, and despite some of the spin that people get from the media, people are figuring out when Joe Biden says that $3.5 trillion doesn't cost anything. I mean, people aren't stupid. And so they realize that what we're doing in Florida is working and they want to be part of it. And we want to keep that going. But we're a closely divided state. I mean, we're not, a state where we're going to win by 20 points. And so we have to continue to fight for our ideas. And what we're doing here at House Campaigns as a speaker designate is raising money, recruiting candidates, making sure that we get our message out and get past some of the media spin to tell the story of what we're really doing up here, which is a story that I think most people will really applaud.
And a lot of people have been moving to the state of Florida, like you mentioned. In 1996, when right before Republicans took the majority, we were about 14 million people in the state. Over 21 million people in the state today. Quite frankly, a lot of people have also found this Florida to be this political and economic safe haven over the last couple of years, and certainly the COVID pandemic amplified that to a degree. And despite the fact that people continue to move here, and that we are still a bit of a divided state from a political standpoint, the voter registration gap has been closing in the state of Florida. It was over 700,000 of a gap that Democrats had as a lead in 2008. That shrunk to 300,000 in 2016, I believe. And now we're at 23,000 and change of a voter registration gap. Clearly, Chairman Joe Gruters of the Republican Party of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis continue to invest in this program. We're investing in that with our partners over in the Senate to make sure that we continue to close that gap. How important is that for the long-term, success of the Republican Party and our efforts going forward?
Well, it's critically important. If you're not registered to vote, you can't vote. And you're right that we've gone from hundreds of thousands of more Democrats and Republicans going back a couple decades to now under 25,000 is the current gap. And it's rapidly moving in our direction, which means, and based on what we can tell from people moving into the state and registering as they come into the state, that those people that are coming in, if they're coming from California, are actually fleeing California and coming in as almost political refugees, or coming in with a desire for a different approach, a freedom and opportunity approach that Florida offers. And so it's breaking more Republican than Democrat. So I know a lot of people I talk to when I go to a town hall or I speak to constituent groups are worried about that. Is that, hey, don't bring your New York values down here and turn us into New York or some of these states that have seen such, extreme responses to a whole variety of issues, and whose states are, teetering on bankruptcy because of the, governance that they've experienced over decades. And that's fortunately not happening. By and large, those people are trending Republican, and so that means hopefully that Florida can continue to be the focal point for what our country can be and what other states can emulate in all kinds of ways. When we go to these conferences about model legislation for education and healthcare and the different areas we've talked about a little bit today, a lot of the bills that they highlight are Florida bills. So we have really not only had a great thing going here recently with Governor DeSantis, but over several decades. The Florida House, it'll be 25 years in November that it turned from Democrat for us. That was a century. I mean, for over 100 years, the Democrats control things and constantly increasing taxes and more onerous regulations, fighting, not engaged more in politics than problem solving. So we have to continue to problem solve as we have. But we've been, I think, an example of innovation, always looking for how can we do this better, faster, cheaper? How can we get the right outcomes without asking the taxpayers to dig into their wallet for more money? And so we've done that. We are one of the best run states from a per capita standpoint. We tax you at the state level lower than almost any state in the country. So we're still getting better outcomes than other states. And so we've done it by being innovative, by looking for ways that we can accomplish what government needs to do, but do so in a way that doesn't break the bank and doesn't break the family budget.
Certainly no better example of that, right, than our school choice model, where we, at a certain point, thanks to Governor Bush's leadership on that front, we worked with the business community to establish this tax credit program to set up these scholarships that has now served hundreds of thousands of students. You all expanded it, made the largest expansion in the country last year. I think that's also one of those issues that people across the state, to your point, right? People aren't stupid. They understand that a one size fits all system just can't work for everybody. Some kids need a different kind of program, and we're providing that, not just with the scholarships, but also removing barriers like zip codes and making sure that you can send your kid to the school that truly makes sense for you. What other issue do you think that's out there that liberals like to try to politicize, but that's really just a simple issue that people clearly understand and that they're on our side with?
Well, I think you just mentioned it. I think we need to be honest and say that when you see rioters, claiming the mantle of social justice, throwing rocks through businesses, that doesn't teach a kid to read. School choice does. School choice means that there's money available for a tutor at night to help your kid get to that reading grade level or get to where they need to be in their math scores. And that group you talked about, that program we set up, which was fought tooth and nail by the left, has survived court challenges and everything else. It's over 100,000 students, the vast majority of which are minority students. So when we talk about social justice and helping people of color, we have done that in the state of Florida. And I am convinced that Governor DeSantis won his election, and many of our candidates have won our elections because we're standing up for people that may not be voting for us right now, but we're going to continue to deliver the message that we're going to fight for them. We're going to fight for people who today do not have opportunity, to make sure that they do. And the one place where I think it is a real clear distinction is our defense of school choice, that every kid deserves to have a high quality education, no matter what zip code they're born in. And I think it's a very much a moral crusade for us. And it's been fought tooth and nail by the Democrat Party here in this state and by unions that want to keep people trapped in institutions and prioritize institutions and adults more than they prioritize children. And so we will continue to fight for people that need it the most. And I think that means that we're actually doing social justice in Florida, if you want to talk about that, and not virtue signaling. And so that's what we see a lot. We see a lot of virtue signaling, but not a lot of results. And we're about results here. And we're going to continue to fight for people to have opportunity in the state of Florida.
And people are going to have a chance to vote for all of you and for you as well. Now, in almost, quite frankly, in less than a year, we're at almost a year away from the 2022 election. And people can continue to learn more about our candidates at FloridaHouseGOP.com and continue to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Florida Majority or FHRCC on Instagram. Chairman, before we sign off, what big issue do you think is going to shape the 2022 election?
Well, I think there's a lot at stake, and I think Florida's in a moment. where all eyes are on us, and what we do here will affect what other states do, what the country may do, and the direction that we take. Because I think there are now two very clear alternatives. I don't know that the people that supported President Biden, I doubt all of them were signed up for what we're getting, and so they're looking at a state like Florida, a governor like Ron DeSantis, and asking, which do I like? And you can see the results. And so I think we're going to campaign very broadly on the concepts of freedom and opportunity, and that's there for everyone. And we will make sure that where there are people who have struggled to find opportunity, that they find it. But certainly not only economic freedom for you to rate, start a business and be prosperous, to see your wages go up, and find areas in workforce training and education. We're we're ranked number one in the country in higher ed, to continue that, but also political freedom. We're at a point now where people get shamed on Facebook or on social media for holding very traditional ideas or very conservative ideas. We've got to be a country that believes in political freedom, and that means if you say things that are offensive to me, that's your right as an American. That's what I fought for in the military. I am due, and everyone else is due. Everyone else reciprocating that. We're America, and that means that we have a very, very broad view of political freedom, and I think that's on the ballot as well, because you've seen over and over again this notion that we're going to tell you what you can say and even believe now. And so in Florida, we're going to stand up as elected leaders for people's economic freedom, their political freedom, and their right to have a life of opportunity and live the American dream. And so we want to make America Florida, hopefully. And I think we can set a real example, and are setting the example for others to follow.
And freedom is on the ballot then in 2022. And folks, thank you so much for joining the inaugural episode of Florida Majority. Chairman, thank you so much for your time. We're looking forward to having the next episode with another one of your colleagues, and that will be announced in the next couple of days. And we're going to continue to do these every so often to make sure that, again, we continue to give you access to the people that represent you in the Florida House of Representatives, to make sure that Florida is the best state to live, work, and raise a family.
Thanks, Andres. Great to be with you.
Thanks, Chairman.